First of all, as you guys mentioned, this First United Bank is amazing to share. Very grateful to be part of First United Bank. Kind of Robin and Erica are really proud of this building. This is a new building for First United Bank, so we are very grateful to be part of this. My name is Brian Hill. I'm an attorney, and I do estate planning and probates. And so my job is to help people manage and steward their assets from one time of life to the other. And when it comes to assets and asset management, I know First United Bank I know their heart, I know their passion, and I know why they take care of clients. I know how they take care of clients. So I couldn't recommend First United Bank more. They do a great job. So thank you guys for giving back to the community. Thank you for pouring into this particular topic. You know, fraud and elderly schemes and scams is a big deal, and especially the people that we love, we don't want them to be taken advantage of. So what we want to do a little bit today is unpack and discuss and prepare people for frauds and schemes. So first of all, there's a little write-up on Erica. She does everything, right? You can see what she does, and what's not comes through here a little bit is her passion for the community. So Erica, thanks again for doing what you do for the bank and for Oklahoma City. If you can't read tonight, or if you can't sleep, read this. My bio will put you to sleep. Okay, fraud types and costs for the United States. I know this is kind of small, but I want you guys to see some of these enormous numbers. I mean, the number of fraud that are happening for people in 60 to 69, that's 200,000 fraud cases that are happening in the United States. Well, this is when we're supposed to be at our smartest. This is when we're supposed to say, hey, listen, I've been experienced, I'm wise with the world, and I know what's going on. But look at this, from 30 to 39, that's the highest category of fraud. So it's not just one demographic that falls victim to fraud. Sometimes emotions drive our decisions. And when emotions drive our decisions financially, that can be tough. And so we want to show, and Erica provided these slides, these types of frauds that come in, imposter scams, online shopping, prizes and sweepstakes, business opportunities, investment-related, healthcare, travel, foreign money scams, they're all real. Do you know why people do these types of scams? Because they work. That's the simple method, and the simple reason is they work. We frequently fall victim to these types of scams. So it's not just an older age demographic. We can see that multiple demographics fall victims to scams, so we want to talk about that. Identity theft, account takeover, forgery, fraudulent transfer, misrepresentation, phishing, loan fraud, real estate fraud. It happens everywhere. And so you can think, how many of these would apply to me? Identity theft, everybody should raise their hand, right? I could be a victim of that. Account takeover, forgery, fraudulent transfer, all those are pitfalls for us. So I want to tell you a story or a quick anecdote that my son gave me. He's just turned 15, and so he told me, he said, hey Dad, what are the 3 hardest things in the English language to say? So I'm kind of nervous when my 15-year-old asked me that kind of story. And I said, what is it? He said, the first one is, I need help. The second one is, I'm sorry. And the third one is Worcestershire sauce. But I want to talk about the first one, I need help. In our society today, we do not like to admit that we need help. We do not like to admit that we might not have all the answers. So we build these walls either out of pride or worse, out of shame and guilt. So don't do that. If you need help, call somebody, call a trusted advisor, call an attorney, call a CPA, come to First United, come talk to Robin, come talk to Erica. They will help you make these decisions. If it's a good decision, let's talk about it. Let's reaffirm that decision. If it's a bad decision, wouldn't you want to know up front? Wouldn't you want to know in advance? So there is a high-risk demographic. I want to talk about that today a little bit deeper. And so I would ask everybody to think about 2 types of people. The people we know and love, right? Our families, our friends, people that we do not want to get taken advantage of. And then the second demographic I really want everybody to think of, this is the hard one, think about yourself. We are all going to eventually get into one of these high-risk demographics. Statistically, fraud happens when someone has cognitive impairment, poor physical health, poor mental health, isolated, and a learning disability. These are, if you have this demographic, if you are part of this, and we will all be part of this, right? We will all be there someday. Cognitive impairment, I'm not as sharp as I used to be. I don't remember things. I get confused easily. Technology doesn't work. If my poor physical health is part of it, or poor mental health, or if you're isolated, that's an emotion that's very hard to deal with. And so sometimes those emotions that come with these demographics can lead to a real increase in fraud. So again, Erica's going to unpack this a little bit more in a little bit, but if you have someone in your life that might be cognitively impaired, or poor physical health, poor mental health, isolated, please think about them right now. And remember, we're all going to be there someday. Okay, so AARP, Association of Retired Persons, put out some warning signs and some things that if you see this in your friends and family or yourself, right? Remember that other demographic. If you see this, this is a warning sign. This is a leading indicator that something is wrong. Changes in patterns of spending, transfers, or withdrawals from accounts. It is customary for a check to be worth $72.39, right? That's a normal. Things aren't always square. But if I'm all of a sudden taking out, or my grandmother's taking out $10,000 chunks, that's a large change in behavior. Isolation from family and friends. There's a lot of wealth in this country, but the wealth doesn't always mean that we are connected. And sometimes when people are isolated or they isolate themselves, they're doing it out of shame or out of fear. And so when people start to isolate themselves from friends and family, that can be a trigger sign that something is not right. And they might be scammed upon or might be fraudulent, and that people try to take advantage of that. And we talk about financial activity that cannot be explained. If my grandmother is going to the store and buying groceries, that's fine. But $10,000 distributions, $5,000 distributions, transfers to other bank accounts that she hadn't been doing, that's a warning sign. Another warning sign this happens frequently is our day-to-day cash is withdrawn down to zero and we can't pay routine bills. When somebody's always been able to pay their bills and all of a sudden they can't, and they're withdrawing from a savings account or retirement account, that's a warning sign. And then sudden changes to estate planning documents. As an estate planning attorney, I see this happen frequently where someone will call and say, hey, I'm in hospice and now I want to change all of my estate plan and I'm not bringing my family member in, I'm just bringing my caretaker in. That's a warning sign. It might be fine, but those are warning signs that we want to be very much aware of. Another warning sign is when somebody brings in or adds joint owners to an account. Right, that changes the ownership of some of those accounts. So if you're seeing this happen, or if you're doing it, you need to be aware of that. So how do you avoid financial abuse? It may sound like common sense, but I really think people need to develop a plan in advance. Assuming it's not going to happen to you, assuming that you're impervious to it is not a good plan. Assuming that you're not going to hit that demographic of mental impairment or physical impairment or isolation, that is not a plan. Hope is not a plan. Develop a plan in advance. Prepare and design documents that can be implemented if someone becomes vulnerable. What are those type of documents? Powers of attorneys, durable power of attorney for medical, for the property, a revocable trust, and then share this with somebody you know and trust. Share this information. I've had a client the other day that did a very wise thing. And they said, hey, I'm in charge of my bank account, but I want copies of my statements to go to my attorney or to go to my CPA. But this particular lady, she wanted to go to her daughter. Their daughter didn't have signing authority, but she wanted her daughter to see that. So she developed a plan in advance to share information. And so I think that's very, very wise is to do that. Powers of attorneys, I'm happy to go into more detail about that. But if you become incapacitated where you can't make decisions, you need to plan in advance who's going to do that for you. Who's going to carry on the day-to-day function of your life. It's very powerful and a great, very easy solution. Very, very simple to do. So, how do we do a proactive plan to beat fraud? One of the ways that we help our estate planning clients is to put checks and balances in advance. Clients can prepare documents that can be implemented if they become vulnerable to exploitation. So how do we do that? Well, if the banker, if the CPA notices transactions and notices fraudulent things that are happening, then we need to have a plan in place. That's where the power of attorney can come in. And if a trust is involved, and you've done estate planning and your trust owns those assets, when somebody becomes incapacitated, they've already created a plan. Who's going to step in and manage my funds? Who's going to step in and be responsible? That's called a successor trustee. That trustee can step in and drive the boat. It is way too late to create that plan once you've already hit one of these stages. You must create a plan in advance. You must have something ready. No one goes and buys fire insurance after the fire started. That's the wrong time to do it. Nobody creates a plan once they've already left the house. You need to do that in advance. And I implore you to think about it. And I implore you to think about the most vulnerable people in your lives, but again, also think about yourselves. Because we all say, I will never be there. I'm always smart. I've never been scammed before, to my knowledge, right? We don't know that. But I want you to realize that it can happen to anybody. There was I'll spare you the details, but a U.S. senator, probably 10 years ago, was scammed via an email scam. One of the U.S. senators, one of the smartest people that we can elect, was scammed. It can happen to anybody. And the scammers are becoming very, very, very creative. And I know Eric is going to talk a little bit about some of these tools and techniques they use, but one of the most terrifying ones is when somebody calls in and acts like a grandchild or a child, and they disguise the voice, and a grandparent feels like they're helping their loved one that's stuck. That terrifies me, because how do I know the difference? Right? How can I put those checks and balances in to realize, does a loved one really need help? Are they really stuck in a foreign country and they just need money? It's very, very hard to do. So again, plan in advance. I wanted to put one more slide up here to make sure that steps that you can take. This is very clear. Powers of attorney, there's two types of them. One is for health and one is for property, right? And you can say, if I can't make decisions for myself, then I transfer the ability to make decisions for my bank account and all my financial decisions under the power of attorney. One of the great things for revocable trust, right? If you're going to do a revocable trust and you're the sole beneficiary, that's a protective plan, because that money can't be given to anybody else. You plan in advance. Trustee whom you love, a successor trustee. What about one with multiple signatures, right? If I'm making bad decisions, or I have a propensity, or I have a very generous heart, and I have a propensity to give money away, maybe I need to make a plan in advance where checks require multiple signatures, just to be double sure. One of the things that's tough, I've noticed when I do estate planning over the years, is there's something about sharing finances with people who don't like to do that. Either we want to be modest and we don't want to tell people what we have, or maybe it's the other way and we are a little embarrassed and we don't want to share people what we have. But we, as a rule, as a society, especially here in Oklahoma, we don't want to share our finances. But when you hide things, when you hide that information, it really lends itself to fraud, because you're trying to be secretive, you're trying to be discreet, and I really think it isolates people. So I would encourage you, the more people with access to the information, not access to the funds, understand the difference, just access to the information, the better the opportunity to spot the abuse, right? If you're close to your banker, if you're close to First United Bank, and that banker knows your habits and they know your signature, if something doesn't look right, we want to trust a trusted advisor in their gut to say, hey, I'm going to raise the hand, I'm going to ask some questions. Again, we've seen this time and time again. When fraud happens, what do? What's our emotional response? We feel embarrassed, so the worst thing that we can do is hide it. We can act like it doesn't exist. We feel maybe ashamed, we feel maybe embarrassed, but everybody needs help. Remember, there's three things that are very hard to say. The first one is, I need help. So if you feel like you've been a victim, or feel like you may have made a mistake, raise your hand, come and ask for help, and I promise you, the people here at First United Bank, our law firm, anybody else in the community would love to help you. There are a lot of resources online, some in Oklahoma, some at a federal level, that can help abuse. But if we don't report it, it's hard to solve it. So the more people that can come forward and say, hey, I was duped by this, or I made a mistake, it happens, but I just want people to have the courage to do that. So that's it for me on kind of the high level discussion on fraud, and I want to introduce Erica. And I know I've learned a lot from Erica. She's got a lot of great resources here at the bank, and so I'm excited to hear what she has to say.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I get to follow a lawyer who can think quickly on their feet, but I have videos. That's my counter to that. I might not have the quick on my feet, but we're just going to talk a little bit about different scams that are out there, and unfortunately this is somewhat long because there are so many, but we'll make it fun and interactive hopefully. But first, thank you for this partnership. My job is I am not a banker. I'm the person who's supposed to do community outreach and connect, and I love when we find partners who we align with so well with our purpose and values, and so appreciative of this and this opportunity to partner. So this is called Bamboozled by Fraud. And this is just kind of what we're going to cover today. And I will not read everything, but this is just all that's out there to take into account, and it's a lot, unfortunately. And as we talk about emotions, right? They prey on those emotions. I mean, retail therapy exists because money and emotions are tied together, and they know that. So they're just thinking of different ways, and I think just knowing what's out there is the best way and only way to really prevent becoming a victim yourself. You really love that. Okay. Oh, this is the old thing. Okay, we're good. So, bamboozled by fraud. So the number one they're calling it is the crime of the 21st century is cyber fraud against seniors. They're saying this is one of the fastest growing crimes that is happening worldwide right now, and so awareness is truly your best arsenal in this fight. So who are the abusers? It can be people you know, unfortunately, people you think that you can trust, but more likely than not, it's a total stranger who's pretending that they're someone that you know. So, oops, sorry. And the thing to remember, as I said, anyone can be the victim. I will say we go through compliance training. This is safe space. And one of them is about fraud. And then about 2 weeks after you take the class, our IT department sends an email, and I have clicked on it every time. Even though I have just taken the class, I know that I hear IT being like, Erica, like every time. But I always click on it because it looks real, or it's a $10 Amazon gift card, I'm willing to take the risk, all the things. So just know that it can affect everybody, even if you think you have been trained. So there's no shame in it. I mean, there are entire departments in your credit card who, if you are ashamed to talk to them, you're not going to get their money back, and they work at it all the time, and they have seen everything. And I promise, if you think your case is the worst, it is not. So telephone scams. I don't know if you all have had this, but you get a phone number and it looks like it's like in your neighborhood or it's a business. Maybe you're at a computer so you quickly Google it. This is the newest and fastest growing, where they spoof a number. They pretend that it's local because you're more apt to answer if you think it's somebody like, oh, maybe it's so-and-so has a new number, or my neighbor down the street. So we urge you to be sure that you know the number. If it's important, they will call you back. They will leave a message, and then you can call them back. So once the scammers know that this is a working number, once you pick up, they then will add it to a database. They're just trying to find out what numbers are real and who's gonna pick up. And if you have your number, even if you have it on the do not call registry, if you've ever given that information to a political campaign or a nonprofit, they can still call you. So your number is still out there, and then they can still sell the numbers, all the things. So we really urge you, if you don't know the number, just let it go to voicemail. And even if you know them, sometimes don't leave a message, and that's great too. Because if you don't leave me a message, I will not call you back. That is just my thing. If it's important, you'll call me. So here's my fun video that I promised I would have, and this is about spoofing. And it did not work, and I was all excited to play it. Well, we're not gonna see it, sorry. So this was basically an example of hanging up or not answering. So we're gonna go over to the grandparent scam, something that was already addressed. They're really good. They'll muffle their voice, they'll pretend cry, hoping that maybe as you're getting older, you're harder of hearing, so it won't recognize the difference on the phone. And so people will get these panic calls like, hey, this is your grandchild, and they'll say the name, and I need emergency money. And they're preying on your emotions. And so it's important to kind of do your due diligence to maybe say like, well, I'll call you, give me your number, I can call you back, that sort of thing. Because they know as a grandparent, I mean, my parents love my daughter more than they love me, and I know that. There's nothing you want to do more than help your grandkids. I get it. Like, I get off the plane, they're from Massachusetts, and they just like walk right past me to my grandkid or to my daughter, so I understand. And I apologize that these videos aren't working, but basically this is just an example of someone calling, trying to muffle their voice, trying to make it sound younger, trying to sound like they're crying or emotional, just to trigger those emotions to you so you will send that money. So the IRS telephone scam is interesting. So they will say that you either owe money, and they'll get kind of threatening about it and say you need to give us this money now, or you might go to jail, I mean, something as extreme as that. Or they'll say, you know what, you have a big refund coming to you, and we need just some information. If you give me your banking, we can take out that processing fee, and then we'll just give you your deposit. And it sounds like when you say it out loud, it sounds so ridiculous, but this is actually really growing right now. They could know the last 4 digits of your social security number. They know all this information, and so we urge you, the IRS sends things, you know, they send paper. And so if you're just getting a phone call from the IRS, we really urge you to hang up and go to the actual IRS phone and call them, and just kind of initiate it on your own versus falling for one of these scams. And they will get hostile to try and scare you into fines, but let's just say the IRS always sends written notification. If you owe the IRS money, I'm telling you they're going to let you know in a way that seems trustworthy, and they're never going to ask for that payment over the phone, and it never requests financial information. So that number down below is a number you should call if you get a call from the IRS, just to make sure that it's real. And also, if you have your friend, you can report it to the IRS that someone has reached out to you as that. So phishing, the one that I always fall for, that I've already just admitted to, you too, yeah, it's so embarrassing every time. I actually worked for a U.S. Senator, and I fell for it in the U.S. Senate as well, so yes. You get that dreaded black screen, then it all just goes away. So phishing scammers have gotten very sophisticated. They can make it look like it's your boss. They can make it look like, I mean, sometimes they'll just add an extra period in the name, or it'll just be the most subtle thing. So if you click on that email address, it usually looks fishy based on versus what's actually popping up and the from. So they're wanting you to click on things. Click on nothing is basically, and you've already said you don't click on Facebook, so that you already have it, you're ahead of the game. If it's an unfamiliar source, especially, never provide numbers. No one's asking you, hey, this is me, I need your credit card number. That just doesn't exist. So we urge you to just delete them, report them as spam. That's a great new option that you can do now, and just report it, and hopefully not having to deal with them anymore. But the malware that they're trying to install will just steal all of your personal information. They're just trying to get any point of entry. This is a fun. So this is the time it takes to hack your password based on the complexity of it. And a funny story, we do different games as a region, kind of as team bonding. And we did this game where everybody sent a picture of their dog and a picture of them, and then we had to match the dog to the owner. And after I did it, I was like, I think we all know each other's passwords now, because my dog was my password, right? I mean, it's for so many of us. So I know it gets frustrating when you have to have a 14-digit password, but there really are reasons for it. I mean, as you can see, my parents were password one until like 3 months ago. It was awful. But they can do it really quickly. I mean, like this one will take 16,000 years, so I feel like you have a pretty good chance at not getting hacked if you do a password with those. So I just think that's a super interesting slide, just to see how quick, and look at all of the purple instantly. That is a lot of instantly. So now we're going to talk about Romance scams. Aw, right? So nice. This is a heartbreaking story of a lady who someone in another country just started contacting her on social media and saying, yeah, I need money to come see you, and she sent him like tens of thousands of dollars to this person. And I apologize again that that's not working. But basically, these are global scams. Sometimes they're domestically based, but a lot of times they're international, and they're trying to reach you through social media or through dating apps. And they unfortunately get people out of their life savings. So again, that preying on the emotions and how closely emotions and money are tied. So lottery sweepstakes scam. Oh gosh, that's as hard to say as Worcestershire sauce. Lottery sweepstakes scam. There we go. Okay. So they will call and they will say, hey, you've won this money, but we need, again, the processing fee, and we can just deposit directly into your account, and people will give that information. They will say that you had a lotto ticket from years ago, maybe you don't remember, and we'll reach out that way. They're trying to trigger like, oh, I guess I did win $10,000. That sounds great. So again, it's another way, because they're preying on the excitement that you have for winning the lottery, but I don't think I have ever had the lottery call me and tell me I've won money. I mean, that's the dream, right? But that's the dream that's just never, it's always going to be a dream, right? But obviously you can turn into a nightmare. So you will never have to pay up front to get a lottery prize. And that is the nature of this scam, is that people are willing to pay a little to what they think is going to be a lot. Now, we all know about skimming. And so skimming can happen, your credit or debit card. Most likely you hear about it at a gas station, and so that's something that, going inside to pay versus paying there at the pump. It's so much more convenient to pay at the pump. Non-bank ATMs are more susceptible than bank ATMs. I am also, First United Bank, we kind of tend to be, don't use a credit card, be a debit card person. I like to use my credit card because you're not losing the money, right? Like if someone frauds you or defrauds you out of $500 on your My Capital One, I don't know. I mean, I just call them and they're like, okay, we're all gonna do the charge. But if you're using your debit card in a bank POS system, they're taking that money, then you have to get it back. Now we're here to help you get it back, but it just adds an extra step to an already stressful situation. Unfortunately, this cannot be avoided because they're getting more and more sophisticated. So it's more about just looking at your statement. I look at mine every day because I have been a victim of credit card fraud. And I think it's just a good habit, at least once a week, to know what's going out and who's taking it and how much, and just making sure and going over your subscriptions. Because I mean, I don't know about you, I don't even know what we've signed up for, or my husband signs up for, so I'll have to ask him like, hey, I just saw this come out, did you sign up for this? So it's just good conversations to be having. So identity theft, this one's pretty scary. They're even doing it with newborns, because there used to be a way where all of our social security numbers were predictable. Now they're kind of mixing it up so they're not so. And so probably everyone in their lifetime will be a victim of identity theft in one form or fashion, unfortunately. So ways to avoid identity theft: protect your social security number and passwords. Don't have, my dad has his contact that he saved on his computer is called passwords. So if you ever gone to my dad's computer and you just search passwords, every single password, his social security number, everything is all under there. Bless him. So excited when he got that computer last year. So we've talked to him about maybe putting it in different places, or not just writing it on a sticky note. Whenever I go to visit my parents in Massachusetts, they have their Wi-Fi password on a sticky note, and they have never found it within an hour. So I'm like, just have it all in one place, but someplace that's safe. And don't have it somewhere that can be hacked into. Protect your incoming and outgoing mail by dropping off your bills and payments at the post office. I know that sounds a bit extreme, but I know I live in Edmond, and there was a time where people were stealing out of your mailbox, even the one outside of the post office. So walking those in is a good thing. And I'm a big pay online person, so you don't even have to deal with that. Sign up.
I have a question for you. What do you think about platforms like LifeLock?
So at our our bank, we offer our own version of LifeLock, so we actually control it. I think it's super helpful because they're doing that monitoring for it. We do, I think it's at like $6 a month. And so we will help you if you ever experience fraud. We will just go to action for you. But I think it's a good thing. But I think if you're